The Philippines has almost no unemployment problem, 4.8%, and 6 million Filipinos who already have a job and are still looking for more work. Those two numbers are not a contradiction. Read together, they are the entire story of Philippine work right now. And the labor force itself is shrinking, 63.8% down from 65.8 a year earlier. That is not a country losing jobs. That is a country where people stopped bothering to look. You have been told artificial intelligence is coming for Philippine work. The data says something stranger. Because almost every number you have been shown about this points one way. The official ones point somewhere else. And the answer changes what you do next, whether you are about to graduate or planning to earn from another country while your family stays put. Because the jobs did not disappear, something else did. First, the panic. You have probably heard that the Philippines is the most AI-exposed labor market on Earth. That is not what the study says. It found that about one-third of Philippine occupations are highly exposed to artificial intelligence. But of those highly exposed jobs, 61% were also rated highly complementary, meaning the technology helps the worker rather than replacing them. What is left, the genuinely displaceable share, is 14% of the workforce. 14% is a serious number. It is not the end of work. And the sector everyone is worried about, business process outsourcing, is the most exposed of all. It is also about 3% of the workforce. 3% of the jobs, 7.4% of the economy, roughly the same share as every peso sent home from abroad. So the panic is pointed at 3%, which leaves a much better question. What happened to the other 97? The sector that kept growing. Start with the industry that was supposed to be wiped out. It employed 1.82 million Filipinos in 2024. This year, it is forecast at 1.96 million. Revenue over the same stretch went from $38 billion to a forecast 42.3. Through the entire panic, both lines went up. One of the sector's biggest employers has cut about 22,000 roles worldwide since early last year. In one quarter of that same stretch, it added 4,000 more. Its own finance chief told investors they had started hiring again. Her words, "We're hiring for the new skill." Then, this month, the industry rewrote its own forecast. The target for 2028 had been $59 billion and 2.5 million jobs. The new best case is $50.5 billion and 2.14 million. 14% fewer jobs than the plan. And the worst case is 1.85 million, which is lower than the 1.89 million the industry already recorded last year. Read that again. In the industry's own downside scenario, revenue climbs for 2 more years and employment ends up smaller than it is today. There is a name for that shape. The headcount decoupling. Revenue and jobs stop moving together. You can see where the money went. Around 170 global capability centers now operate in the country, and last year's growth was credited to those plus banking and healthcare. Higher value work. Fewer seats at the bottom. That is not a collapse. It is a ladder quietly losing its first rung. What that costs you. Among young Filipinos in the labor force, roughly 1 in 8 cannot find work. And 3.2 million are not in employment, education, or training at all. On the most recent count, that is up from 2.8. and the degree is not doing what it was sold as doing. The last full National Tracer study followed people who graduated more than 15 years ago. It found only about half of graduates in licensed courses were working in a job that matched the degree. Meanwhile, the average monthly wage in firms big enough to be counted is 21,544 pesos. In information and communication, it is 43,676, double. And the Metro Manila minimum wage just rose by the largest single amount ever approved there. 60 pesos this month, 25 more in January. That is real money for about 1.1 million workers. It is also the point. A raise you have to be granted is not the same thing as a rung you can climb. Which is why the fastest growing career move in this country is not a promotion. It is a border. The second door. More than 2.5 million Filipinos were deployed for work overseas last year. They sent home $35.6 billion through the banks, 7.3% of the economy. Add what moves outside the banks and what is sent in kind, and it is 39.6. At sea, the Philippines still supplies more crew than any country on Earth. But the version of leaving that matters now needs no recruiter and no plane. Since last year, companies inside the incentive system can keep those incentives with up to half their staff working from home. In April, that ceiling was temporarily raised to 90%, backdated to March, and it runs 1 year unless it is extended. So the rule that lets you keep the job while you leave the building currently has an expiry date on it. Three things then end most of these plans. 1. Tax. A citizen is taxed on worldwide income unless they qualify as non-resident. That is a test, not a status you get by boarding a plane. 2. Your spouse. Many remote work visas quietly forbid the accompanying spouse from working. Spain is the exception and grants family members full work rights. 3. Contributions. Social Security stays compulsory for overseas workers. Health premium collection for them has been suspended since 2020, and its future is still unsettled. And the exit paperwork is now a travel pass, good for 90 days. None of that is a reason not to go. It is the reason to find out before you resign. So here is the whole thing in one line. The jobs did not disappear. The latter did. Revenue kept climbing. Seats stopped being added. Growth stopped needing more of you. You are not competing for a job anymore. You are competing for a rung. Which means the thing worth building is the one both sides want. A contract somebody outside this country will sign. Because the capability centers buying the higher value work and the visa desks abroad are asking for exactly the same document. Last year, the Philippines created its own visa for foreign remote workers, and one of its conditions is unusual. The applicant has to come from a country that offers Filipinos the same visa. Which means a set of countries qualifies, and the condition is written into the law. What nobody has published is how many of these visas have been issued at all. Which countries those are is the next video.